Pain and betrayal overwhelmed me when my husband chose someone else over me. My life was turned upside down in an instant. Everything I thought was immutable crumbled like a house of cards. My husband, a man, suddenly became a stranger. His words about another woman hit me. The pain and betrayal overwhelmed me, and I realized I could no longer stay in that house. I pulled myself together and left the house, not knowing where to go. I turned to my daughter for comfort, and she accepted. But true salvation came unexpectedly, in the person of a stranger I met on the airplane. Together with him, I discovered a new world full of warmth and light. We spent our days enjoying every moment, and gradually I began to realize that life goes on. Despite the betrayal, I found the strength to move forward. My name is Malory. I am 50 years old, and I have lived most of my adult life in New York City, for over 25 years now. This city has become my second home, the place where I found myself, built a career, and started a family. My life has always been busy and eventful. I love my job. I work in marketing research for an international corporation, and every day brings new challenges and opportunities for growth. I also have a wonderful group of friends with whom we keep in close touch despite the busyness and distance. But I am especially proud of the fact that I have been able to build a strong family. My husband, Matt, and I have raised 2 beautiful children who are now longtime adults and independent adults. Our son Jason is a talented programmer who recently moved to San Francisco to work for a leading IT company. And our daughter Emily is an aspiring interior designer. She just graduated and started building her career at a prestigious agency in Brooklyn. They are both successful and happy, and I feel very proud of them. My husband Matt is an engineer and works for a large construction company. He has always been a man of action, dedicated and responsible. Together we have been through many challenges, buying our first home, renovations, endless travel and adventures. We traveled the world, explored new places. Our common interests and goals always brought us together, made our bond stronger. But for the past few months, things have changed. Our days used to be filled with joy and shared activities. We often had family dinners, went to the theater, discussed any plans. There was harmony in our relationship, and it seemed that nothing could break it. The children grew up, but our bond remained as strong as ever. About 6 months ago, however, something began to change. At first, the changes were subtle. Matt started spending less time at home, citing that work was busy. His tardiness became more frequent, and I started to get worried. He used to always call when he was late, but now he just showed up late at night with no explanation. When I tried to talk about it, he got annoyed and said he had too much work to listen to my complaints. Gradually his behavior became even stranger. He started avoiding my questions about where he was and what he was doing. One day I noticed that he was constantly checking his phone, as if he was afraid of missing some important message. Even when it was just the 2 of us, he made sure to keep his phone close by and never left it unattended. This alarmed me, because I had never had this problem before. But the worst of it started when Matt began to criticize me. At first it was small remarks, like that I didn't care enough about him or that we rarely had romantic evenings. Then the accusations got more serious. He started saying that I had changed, that I was different, that I had stopped looking after myself. These words hurt me because I had always tried to be the best version of myself for my family. It was especially hard to hear when he compared me to other women. "Look how slim she is," he would say, showing pictures on social media. Or, "She's always smiling, and you're always disgruntled." Comments like that hit me right in the heart. I felt humiliated and confused. Why did my favorite person suddenly change so drastically? One evening, after another day of silence and alienation, I decided to talk to him frankly. I asked him what was going on, why he was so cold to me. Instead of answering, Matt exploded. He accused me of ruining our relationship. It was unbearable. I felt cold and alienated. "You don't understand anything," he shouted. "I'm tired of all this." "What do you mean, all of it?" I asked in a shaky voice. "What exactly is bothering you?" He stared at me silently, then sighed and said, "Malory, I've met another woman. She understands me better than you do. I want to try it with her." I felt like I'd been doused with a shower of ice. I stood there, unable to believe what I was hearing. My world was crumbling before my eyes. Tears sprang to my cheeks, but I forced myself to hold back. I stared at him, trying to find some glimmer of understanding, but all I saw was a cold expression on his face. How can you say that? I whispered. We've been together all our lives. Life changes, Malory, he said dryly. Sometimes people change. I don't feel the way I used to feel anymore. I'm trying to be honest with you. His words sounded like a sentence. I realized that everything we'd built together had been shattered in an instant. The pain and betrayal overwhelmed me. I couldn't stay in the room with him any longer. Gathering the rest of my strength, I walked out of the room, leaving him alone. That night I realized that I couldn't take it anymore and I had to make a decision. Either continue to live in this pain or try to change the situation. Without thinking, I rushed into the bedroom and started packing. My hands were shaking, tears covered my eyes, but I continued to act mechanically. My bag was quickly filled with necessary things, clothes, documents, some money. I didn't think about what I was taking, I just wanted to get out of here as soon as possible. When I was done, I looked at the room where we had spent so many happy moments. It seemed foreign now, cold. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. Matt was standing in the hallway, watching me with a sort of absent expression on his face. I walked past him without saying a word. The door slammed shut behind me, and I was outside. It was raining, a cold fall rain that instantly soaked my clothes. The drops mixed with my tears, making it feel like the whole world was crying with me. I walked down the streets, not paying attention to direction. My feet carried me forward, and my thoughts fluttered around in my head like birds in a cage. Pain, anger, frustration, all of it bubbling up inside me, not letting me stop. After about half an hour, I stopped at a park bench. The rain continued to pour, but I didn't feel cold anymore. I sat down, trying to pull my thoughts together. What to do next? Where to go? Going home was impossible. I couldn't imagine looking Matt in the eye after everything that had happened. So I pulled out my cell phone and dialed my daughter's number. Emily answered right away, her voice sounding worried. Mom, what's wrong? Why are you crying? I tried to explain to her as briefly and calmly as I could. She immediately offered to come and get me, but I refused. It wasn't easy for her, and I didn't want to add to her worries. Then she suggested something else. Come to my place, Mom. I have a spare room. Please don't stay alone. Her offer seemed like a lifeline to me. I agreed and thanked her. Then I hailed a cab and headed to her house. Emily was waiting for me in the driveway. When I got out of the car, she hugged me tight, just like when I was a child. Her warmth and support helped me calm down a little. We went up to her apartment, and she made me some hot tea. I sat on the couch, surrounded by old photos and warm memories, and slowly began to come to my senses. I spent the next few days trying to sort through my feelings. Emily was there for me, supporting me, listening to my stories and giving me advice. I knew I had a long road of recovery ahead of me, but for the first time in a long time I felt hopeful. Maybe it's not as bad as it seems. Maybe I can start a new life despite everything that has happened. A few weeks passed. I stayed at my daughter's house, trying to keep my mind off Matt. I walked around the city, and gradually the pain subsided, but the emptiness inside remained. I realized that I needed something drastic to finally deal with this crisis. Then one day my daughter suggested that I go to a ski resort. She said that a change of scenery would help me forget about all the bad things and start a new chapter in my life. I hesitated for a long time, but finally decided. She bought me an airplane ticket and I went on a trip. On the plane, I sat by the window, looking at the clouds and thinking about my life. A middle-aged man appeared next to me. He introduced himself as David. We started talking, first about the weather and flying, then about life. It turned out that he, too, was going through a difficult time. We shared our stories and I felt a special connection between us. David turned out to be a very interesting person. He told me about his business, his hobbies, and how he loves to travel. We talked for hours and the time flew by. When the plane landed, we exchanged contacts and agreed to meet again. We spent several wonderful days at the resort. We skied, exploring the snowy slopes, and every descent brought us joy and adrenaline. In the evening we visited cozy restaurants where we tried local dishes and tasted wines. Sauna became our favorite place to relax after an active day. Meetings with David became regular. We spent evenings together, talking, laughing. He told interesting stories from his past and shared his thoughts about the future. His optimism and cheerfulness were transmitted to me, and I began to see the world differently. He helped me forget about the past, showed me that life can be beautiful no matter what. We walked a lot, enjoyed the nature and the atmosphere of the resort. David had a knack for finding amazing places that I didn't even know about. One day we went for a walk along a path leading to a frozen waterfall. In that moment, I felt my heart begin to come alive again. Each day with David was filled with new discoveries and emotions. He gave me a sense of security and confidence that I had lost after my breakup with Matt. We discussed everything, we seemed to have no boundaries to communicate. The time we spent together went by without a trace, leaving warm memories and a desire to continue our communication. When I returned home, I realized that I was ready to move on. I was no longer the same woman who had left home a few weeks earlier. After enduring the pain and disappointment, I found the strength to get back on my feet and get on with my life. Meeting Matt was inevitable, and I knew what I had to do. When I walked into our house, it looked the same as it always did, but now I felt like an outsider here. Matt was sitting in the living room, hope in his eyes. He tried to come toward me, but I stopped him with a glare. "Malory, please, let's talk," he began. "I realize I made a mistake. Let's try to make it right." I took a deep breath and looked him straight in the eye. "No, Matt. It's over. I filed for divorce." His face contorted with shock. He tried to argue, but I was adamant. I knew I'd made the right choice. Our relationship was over, and there would be no going back. After talking to Matt, I packed up my things and moved in with David. It wasn't an easy decision, but I felt it was the right thing to do. David supported me through this difficult time and I was grateful for that. Now, looking back, I realized that Matt's betrayal was the beginning of a new phase in my life. I found the strength to overcome pain and fear, and it made me stronger. New opportunities opened up in front of me, and I was ready to explore them. Thus ended this chapter of my life. Of course, new trials and difficulties were ahead of me, but I believed that I would be able to cope with them. After all, the main thing is not to give up and believe in yourself.